Hello and welcome to the September 2024 edition of my photo recap. If you don't know what that is, it's just where I go through my month of photography and talk about my 5 favorite photos that I took in the last month. We have a lot to talk about here, so I'm not going to ramble too much up top. We're just going to get going, starting with something that I call the kitty corner, where it's just a bunch of photos of my cats, so enjoy. Wasn't that delightful? Now, let's get to some photos that I took this month, starting with this. This photo was taken on Ilford HP5 Plus with a Bronica SQAI. So, my girlfriend Harley grew up and lived in this small town upstate called Pine Plains. Her birthday was at the beginning of September, and we went to go visit her family, and she was out on this sort of spa day trip, girl trip with her mom and her sister, and they left me to roam around town taking photographs, which is something I feel like I've always wanted to do in Pine Plains, but never really had the opportunity to. And this building is a building I've seen many times and never really properly photographed, and when I got it back, I was very, very pleased with the results. Somehow it's got an element of feeling almost two-dimensional. Perhaps it's just the angle of the sun or the light contrast that HP5 can often bring to your images. But to me, it's a photograph that, while confined to a pretty limited subject matter, is also emblematic of the way that I view a small town like Pine Plains. Especially when you get the addition of the town motto, I guess is what it is. Good things happen in Pine Plains. And another element that I love in this photo is the barber shop that is visible, and it just gives you further a sense of being in a small town, along with the architecture of the building, especially when you start getting up to the roof. This photo really made me feel the way that I feel when I look at certain photographers' work that sort of roam around the United States or rural America, documenting small town to small town and capturing the worlds in which people live. One that comes to mind is William Christenberry, but most of his work is in color, and he shoots a lot of abandoned buildings. This building is not abandoned. Oftentimes when I think about the type of photographer I want to be, it's sort of that roaming rural America photographer that comes to mind, and it's not often that I get to go on road trips and photograph what I find, because I have a fairly busy life here in New York City. But in some idealized version of reality of my life in the future, I have this ability to go out and explore small towns like Pine Plains and really sit with them and just document them. And yeah, this photograph just really encapsulates a lot of those feelings. This photo was taken on Kodak Colorplus in the Pentax Espio 115G. So this photo kind of goes a bit in tandem with a photo that I talked about last month. Last month, I was at my cousin's wedding, and I shared a photograph of my cousin and my uncle. And it was a photo that I took on the Pentax Espio. Let me see if you can see that. Yeah, there it is. And I talked about how using a point-and-shoot camera isn't always my go-to, but in scenarios where it's necessary, I'm always glad that I have it. And here we have another example of that, because I was at my friend's wedding, my friend Matt, and it was actually 2 friends of mine that I've known since freshman year of college. So for a decade, I'm getting old. For a decade now, I've known them, and they just got married a few weeks ago, and I was lucky enough to witness it and be a part of their wedding. And I had my camera with me and a roll of Colorplus in it, and I just went around documenting whatever I could. And the Pentax Espio is one that I've mentioned a couple times on this channel, and I do think I'm going to do a full review or just a full video talking about it, because little did I know, it's a fairly sought-after little camera, and one that carries a hefty price tag depending on where you're looking, but one that I bought fairly cheap at a thrift store. But anyway, we were out on the dance floor cutting up a rug, as you do at a wedding, and I just went around taking photos of whatever I could, including this one here of my friend Matt, the one getting married, and in the background you see Pat really just feeling the vibe. The groove was in his heart. He was really feeling hot to go on the dance floor. But back to this one, I think I picked this one just because of the smile on Matt's face and the pure joy that I was able to capture. And like I said last month, being able to capture that on a dance floor and a dark, dimly lit pavilion of sorts, it's pretty amazing when you shoot film to have the ability to capture something like that, something spontaneous, something in the moment, something pure. That's why I put this in my top 5 of the month, just because of getting to see that pure joy on the face of this friend of mine. Quickly, I want to tell a story. I had a bit of a mini panic at the end of this night. We all know weddings can get kind of crazy. You're exhausted. It's midnight. You're going back to the hotel. And I finished shooting this roll. I took the roll out of the camera for whatever reason. In hindsight, it was a pretty dumb thing to do. And then when we were leaving, everyone was leaving the venue to go to the hotel for an after party. And I was loading my jacket into the car. And I went looking in the pocket for the roll of film. And naturally, it wasn't in there. And then if you've ever been in the scenario, you know how it goes. You start freaking out, you start panicking, you start searching the ground everywhere, hoping that it's not in the parking lot about to get run over by someone. You run back to the venue, you talk to the staff, you say, did you see a roll of film anywhere? And the staff is all comprised of younger people who probably don't even know what a roll of film looks like. So yeah, I was panicking pretty hard, and I couldn't find the roll anywhere. So I had a little bit of a search party going on, and eventually we recovered it. Someone had picked it up off the ground and put it in their pocket, and thank God that they did. But I can't tell you how devastated I would have been had I lost this roll and was just running it over in my head that entire night. It would have been an incredibly tragic end to an incredibly vibrant and positive evening. My girlfriend was like, it's not that big a deal, but in my mind, it was. I mean, it was a big deal to me. Maybe it's something lost to the digital era that we find ourselves in, that people disregard these sorts of things because they're so capturable with a click of a button at any moment. And in my mind, I didn't just lose a roll of film, I lost moments like this. I don't know, it was a bit of an existential evening to me because it really made me consider and think about why shooting film means so much to me. Yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling, so I'm gonna leave this here, and yeah, we're gonna go talk about the next photograph. This photo was taken on Kodak Colorplus with the Pentax 17. Earlier in the month, I put out a video that I was very excited to have the opportunity to make. It was a video about shooting the Pentax 17, and it was loaned to me by my local photo lab that I go to, exposure therapy. They were nice enough to let me borrow the camera and make a video to make a review, and the reason they did that is because they're incredible fans of the camera, and they want more people to know about it and to use it, and they want more people to go out and buy it and support Pentax in whatever Pentax is doing in this endeavor to make new film cameras in the year 2024, or I guess 2025 next year. Hopefully they'll have a new one coming out fairly soon. My experience shooting the Pentax 17 was pretty positive, although I was maybe a little bit down on them in that review, but be sure to check out that video if you haven't. I'm not going to go through all of my thoughts and feelings on that camera because I expressed it all in that video, which I know is kind of a long one, but it was a fun one to shoot and a lot of fun to make, and I was struggling cutting things out of it because it all just felt so necessary. But shooting with the camera was fun. It was easy. It was a bit of a relief. It was a good middle ground between shooting something like a 35mm SLR and shooting a point and shoot. And it was mainly because you have some level of creative control over your image, but for the most part, the camera does a lot of the work for you. But anyway, we're here to talk about this photograph, which is actually 2 photographs because if you don't know, the Pentax 17 is a half-frame camera. So you get 72 photos on a normal 36 exposure roll of film. So what we have here is a diptych of 2 photos that I took back-to-back over at Brooklyn Bridge Park, where I was just documenting my time on a walk. And I think what you see here, which is really great, is the wide angle of the lens, which really is able to capture the landscape really, really well, and being able to capture the scope of what was in front of me, especially in the image with the boats and the Manhattan skyline in the background. I remember standing there for a little while waiting for the guy on the dock to stand in the perfect position. He just wouldn't stop moving, and I really needed him to stop moving. And for a split second, he stood there looking out at the boats, and I think that I captured it right at the perfect time. As for the photo on the right with the lamp post and the sky beyond it, nothing too crazy exciting there, but really, really interesting to see how the Pentax 17 metered the scene. And overall, across the board, all of the images that I took with that camera, the light meter really nailed maybe 98% of the time, and I was incredibly impressed by the light meter in the Pentax 17. Compositionally, neither of these photographs are anything to write home about, but they really do give me a nice like summer in New York City vibe to them. And I mean, the colors all around, I'm very much a big Colorplus supporter. I shoot it all the time. It might be my go-to Kodak color negative film. And yeah, that's all I'm really going to say about this diptych here. Definitely go check out that Pentax 17 video and you can hear way more of my thoughts about shooting with that camera. And spoiler alert, it's not the last time we're going to talk about the Pentax 17 in this video. This photo was taken on Kentmere Pan 100 in the Bronica SQAI. Alright, this one I was heavily considering not putting in this video and not putting in my top 5 in the month, but the more I've looked at it and the more I've lived with it, the more I'm actually incredibly proud of this photo. And I think what makes me most proud of it is the fact that I almost didn't take it at all. And we can get into that a little bit, but I've spoken many times on this channel about not taking photographs or struggling to take photographs of things that seem inconsequential or things that just seem passing, or I don't know, sometimes I feel like I spend too much time considering the photo before taking it, and I know I'm not alone in that feeling. And that's something that over the course of the last 2 years or so, I've slowly but surely been getting over. And so I had this bowl of pho that I was eating and heated up and put in this bowl and set it on the counter, and the steam coming off of it was right in the path of the sunlight that was shining through my kitchen window, and it really just caught my eye, and I had the camera right there next to me. So I picked it up and really without thinking just took the photo. And especially when shooting medium format, I'm always a little bit more considerate with the photos that I take, simply because I have fewer images that I can make per roll. So I tend not to just go around shooting willy-nilly. And when I got this photo back, I was kind of shocked at how much I really loved it. And even on a compositional level, it's just really pleasing to look at. We have this backwards L shape that's sort of creating a little bit of an arabesque upward parabola, if you will. And I had these two black chopsticks sticking out, and it really sort of creates a few implied triangles within the image. I posted this photo on Instagram and showed a bunch of people and whatever, and not thinking much of it, and people really seemed to gravitate toward it. It did fairly well, and I think that the reason for that is because it's something that my girlfriend is always trying to instill in me, is that food is a bit of a universal language, and I'm just not a food guy. I really only eat for sustenance, and that's about it. I don't care to watch videos about people making food or eating food, especially not eating food. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. But I posted this photo, and I think that everyone that enjoyed it on social media were people that know the feeling of having a nice hot bowl of soup or seeing the steam rise out of the food in front of you. It could really almost get your mouth watering a little bit just looking at the photo. And I think that that's really the appeal of an image like this. I mean, you get the really nice medium format, shallow depth of field, you get the bowl and everything in the background completely blurred out. I must have been shooting at around a 2.8 or something because, I don't know, it looks like I was pretty close to wide open. But yeah, there's just this universal language that comes with certain images, and I think that this is an image you could show anyone around the world and they will know the feeling of being in the presence of a hot bowl of soup. And that to me on the surface sounds like an incredibly mundane and boring thing to document or even be talking about, but in this case of a still image, that's everything, and that's part of the reason why we do what we do. At least that's how I feel. So yeah, I mean, this photo had to go in the top 5 of the month, and I'm glad I got to talk about it for a little bit. This photo was taken on Kodak Colorplus with the Pentax 17. This next photograph is a pretty special one to me because I am an incredibly huge fan of the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat. And if you don't know who that is, he was an American artist who rose to success during the 1980s as part of the Neo-Expressionism movement. He was maybe one of the first artists that I truly became obsessed with in my youth when I was in high school. And I do think that there's something about his work that is just elevated He married text and image abstraction, figuration, and historical information with this sort of contemporary critique and social commentary. And though his paintings almost seemed juvenile in a way, there was something acutely political about them, and he was talking about colonialism and class struggle and things of that nature. I actually highly recommend for anyone interested in Jean-Michel Basquiat or anyone just learning about him for the first time in this video, I urge you to watch a film that was made about him called Basquiat. It stars Jeffrey Wright as Jean-Michel Basquiat, David Bowie as Andy Warhol. It's got Benicio del Toro, Gary Oldman, Dennis Hopper, just an incredible cast of actors. So anyway, Jean-Michel Basquiat was sort of my first obsession with art and really got me thinking about the ways that art could go against the grain, so to speak. I think that in that time period of my life in high school, I was finding more and more niche artistic work, and I was finding artists who were doing things differently than the mainstream and just bucking against certain societal trends. I think it was around the time that I learned about the American independent cinema movement of the early 1990s with filmmakers like Kevin Smith or Richard Linklater. It was an incredibly formative time period in any person's life, and when you learn that art can give you something different than, Monet paintings, it can be kind of exciting. So all of that being said, when I learned not too long ago that Jean-Michel Basquiat was buried in Greenwood Cemetery, which is less than an hour from my apartment, I jumped at the opportunity to go visit his grave and pay my respects and just sit with him for a little while and appreciate the way in which this man who passed away so long before I was ever even born had such an incredible impact on the way that I would view art and the way that I would view the world. And yeah, so all of that is to say, I'm not really talking about the photograph here. I mean, it's a perfectly fine photograph that I took with the Pentax 17 once again, but the reason I think I'm talking about this is just because of the context surrounding the photograph. You might see the photograph and be getting nothing out of it, but knowing what Jean-Michel Basquiat means to me, hopefully it elevates this photograph to something more than just what it is on the surface. And I think that that's a fun lesson in general, to look at a photograph and imagine the context behind it, even if you have no idea what the context is. To just take the leap and ask yourself, what's really going on here? And it's not an easy thing for everyone to do, to fully invest yourself emotionally in a still image and in the context surrounding a still image, but I think it's a worthwhile exercise that everyone should pursue. Anyway, this has been a long one, so I'm going to wrap this whole video up. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I know that these photo recap videos are not the most exciting ones, not the ones that everyone's looking forward to that subscribe to the channel, but they are certainly worthwhile for me to make, if only for myself, and even if no one's watching them, I get something out of these every single time. Sometimes these videos get a little deep, and I like that. I think that that's what the intention is. It's a way for me to reflect on what I'm doing here, not just on the channel, but here on Earth. So anyway, if you like this video, if you seem to like what I do on this channel, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified when new videos are released. You can support the channel into the future by finding that join button and becoming a member, and for a few bucks a month, you could really just help me make more of these videos well into the future. You could also help support me directly by going to my print shop and consider buying a print of my work. They're really great quality from darkroom.com, and I urge everyone to go take a look at those. You could also really help support me personally as an artist, as a writer, not as a YouTuber, by watching this video that I made about a novel that I self-published earlier this summer. I'm really, really proud of it, both the video and the novel, and if you watch the video, I urge you to consider buying a copy for yourself on Amazon. And yeah, I do think that we should go around supporting artists whenever we can. Obviously, if you have the means to, it would just mean the world to me, so consider doing that. And yeah, this was a pretty abundant video, a pretty abundant month of photography for me, and I look forward to the next one, and I'll see you all next time.